Pay attention to this surveillance footage from Platform 7 at Central Metro Station. You're watching a woman in a dark dress walking along the platform edge, her designer handbag clutched at her side. Notice how steady her gait is, how unhurried her pace. The timestamp reads 7:23 a.m. What you're witnessing is someone who just committed an unthinkable act. Someone who, less than 2 hours earlier, sealed the fate of 4 people who trusted her completely. She's not running. She's not panicking. She's walking to catch a train like it's just another Thursday morning. But it's not just another Thursday. And what investigators would later discover about the hours leading up to this footage would shake an entire community to its core. You know that feeling when you wake up and something just feels off? Like the air in your house is different, or there's a sound that shouldn't be there? For the Richardson family's neighbors, that feeling came knocking on May 18, 2021, when they noticed something strange. The Richardson house was completely silent at 8:30 in the morning. No kids running around getting ready for school, no cars backing out of the driveway, just nothing. The Richardsons weren't the kind of family you'd ever imagine tragedy finding. David Richardson, 38, was one of those dads who coached Little League on weekends and never missed his kids' piano recitals. He worked in software development, the kind of steady job that paid for their comfortable home in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. His wife, Amanda Richardson, 36, had built a life that looked picture-perfect from the outside: PTA meetings, book clubs, and a career in pharmaceutical sales that kept her traveling but never for too long. And the kids? 10-year-old Sophie was the artist, always coming home with paintings that Amanda would proudly display on the refrigerator. 12-year-old Nathan lived for soccer, his room plastered with posters of his favorite players. And little Emma, just 7 years old, was the family sunshine, the kind of kid who hugged everyone and laughed at her own jokes. They lived on Maple Ridge Drive, one of those streets where everyone knew everyone, where block parties happened every summer and kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on. It was the kind of neighborhood where people actually meant it when they said, "Good morning." But on this particular morning, nobody from the Richardson house was saying anything at all. The call came into 911 at 8:47 a.m. Mrs. Chen, the neighbor from 3 houses down, had noticed that the Richardson kids weren't at the bus stop. That might not sound like much, but Mrs. Chen was the unofficial neighborhood watch. She noticed everything. And the Richardson kids never missed the bus. Never. She'd walked over to the house, knocked on the door. Nothing. Rang the doorbell. Silence. She could see David's car in the driveway, Amanda's SUV parked right next to it. Both vehicles were there, which meant someone should be home. "I just had this terrible feeling," she'd later tell investigators. "Like something was very, very wrong." The dispatcher sent a patrol unit to do a wellness check. Officers Martinez and Thompson arrived at 9:03 a.m., and what happened next would haunt them for years. They knocked. They called out. They tried peering through the windows, but the curtains were drawn. Martinez walked around to the back door while Thompson stayed at the front. That's when Martinez noticed it. The back door was slightly ajar, just an inch or two, like someone had closed it but hadn't quite pulled it shut all the way. "Portland Police, is anyone home?" The silence that greeted them was the kind that makes your skin crawl. Not the normal quiet of an empty house, but something heavier, something wrong. Thompson pushed the door open, and that's when the smell hit them. Not the sharp, immediate stench of something obviously terrible, but a subtle, almost sweet odor mixed with something chemical. Martinez knew that smell. He'd been on the force for 15 years. It was the smell of a house where something had gone catastrophically wrong. They found them in the bedrooms. David was in the master bedroom, lying on the bed fully clothed in what looked like yesterday's work attire. His skin had an unusual cherry red tint, something the officers didn't immediately recognize but would later understand the significance of. He wasn't breathing. The kids were in their rooms. Sophie was in her bed, her sketchbook lying open on the nightstand next to her. Nathan was sprawled on his floor, surrounded by soccer equipment, like he'd collapsed while getting ready for practice. Little Emma was tucked into her bed, her favorite stuffed elephant clutched in her small arms. All of them were gone. Officer Thompson stumbled back into the hallway, his radio already at his mouth. "We need fire and rescue at 847 Maple Ridge Drive immediately. We have multiple victims, unresponsive, requesting hazmat protocols." Here's the thing about carbon monoxide poisoning. It's called the silent killer for a reason. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. It just quietly steals the oxygen from your blood until your body simply shuts down. The victims often don't even know what's happening to them. They get tired, lie down, and never wake up. The fire department arrived within 7 minutes, their meters detecting dangerous levels of carbon monoxide still lingering in the house. They evacuated the officers and secured the scene, opening windows and doors to ventilate the structure. But it was far too late for the Richardson family. The medical examiner's initial assessment confirmed what the cherry red skin tone had suggested: acute carbon monoxide poisoning. All 4 victims had died sometime in the early morning hours, probably between 4 and 6 a.m. They'd essentially been asphyxiated in their sleep, their bodies starved of oxygen while their brain functions slowly shut down. But here's what made investigators pause. Where was Amanda? Her car was in the driveway. Her purse, well, a purse, was hanging in the front hall closet. But Amanda Richardson herself? Nowhere to be found in that house of death. Detective Sarah Chen, no relation to the neighbor, caught the case. She'd been with the Portland PD for 12 years, working homicide for the last 6, and something about this scene immediately felt off to her. Carbon monoxide deaths happen, she'd later say in court testimony. Faulty furnaces, improper ventilation, tragic accidents. But they don't usually happen when one family member mysteriously isn't home. The gas company was brought in to inspect the furnace. What they found made this case transform from a tragic accident into something far more sinister. The heating system had been tampered with, extensively. Someone had deliberately sealed the ventilation ducts with industrial-grade adhesive, the kind you'd have to specifically purchase from a hardware store. The carbon monoxide that should have been venting safely outside was instead being pumped directly back into the house's HVAC system, circulating through every bedroom. And the smoke detectors? Every single one of them had been disabled. Not just the carbon monoxide detectors, all of them. The batteries had been removed and replaced with dead ones, the kind of detail that required forethought and planning. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Detective Chen stood in that house at 2:30 p.m. on May 18th, her mind racing through the implications. 4 people were dead, killed in what was clearly a premeditated act, and the one person who should have been the 5th victim was missing. Where was Amanda Richardson? The answer came faster than anyone expected. At 3:15 p.m., Amanda walked through the front door of her office building downtown, 23 miles from her house. Her coworkers would later describe her as perfectly normal. She'd been in meetings all morning, participated in a conference call, even grabbed lunch with 2 colleagues from the marketing department. When police arrived at her office at 4 p.m., Amanda seemed genuinely shocked. "What do you mean something happened? What's wrong? Are the kids okay?" The performance, if that's what it was flawless. She collapsed when they told her. She screamed. She had to be sedated. The grief appeared absolutely real, but Detective Chen wasn't buying it. Not entirely. "Ms. Richardson, when did you last see your family?" "Last night. I left for work early this morning, around 5:30. I had a breakfast meeting downtown at 6:30. "And how did you get to work?" "I took the metro. I always take the metro when I have early meetings. Parking downtown is impossible." "Which station did you board at?" "Central Metro Station, the 547 train." Detective Chen made a note. Central Metro Station. There would be cameras. "Ms. Richardson, did you notice anything unusual about your house this morning? Any strange smells? Any sounds?" Amanda shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, nothing. Everything was normal. The kids were asleep. David was getting ready for work. I just left." Here's what made that statement problematic. The medical examiner had estimated time of death between 4 and 6 a.m. If Amanda had left at 5:30, And if the carbon monoxide had been building up all night the way the evidence suggested, there's no way she could have walked through that house without noticing something. The air quality would have been terrible. At minimum, she should have felt dizzy, nauseous, disoriented, unless she knew exactly what was happening and had taken precautions. The investigation kicked into high gear. While Amanda was being questioned, forensic teams were tearing apart the Richardson house looking for evidence. What they found painted a disturbing picture. In the garage, tucked behind some old paint cans, investigators discovered the adhesive used to seal the furnace vents. It was a specialty product, the kind used in industrial applications. They also found a set of work gloves with adhesive residue on them, and those gloves were a women's size small. In the master bedroom, Amanda's nightstand revealed something interesting. Prescription sleeping pills, Ambien, prescribed to Amanda 3 months earlier. The bottle was nearly empty, but according to the prescription records, it should have been completely full. Where had all those pills gone? Detective Chen had a theory. She drugged them, probably put the sleeping pills in their dinner or their bedtime snacks, made sure they'd sleep deeply enough that they wouldn't wake up when the carbon monoxide started building. But they needed proof, and they needed to find out if Amanda had any motive for wanting her entire family dead. The digital forensics team started digging into Amanda's computer and phone records. What they found was a trail of searches that made everyone's blood run cold. Starting 6 months earlier, Amanda had been Googling phrases like carbon monoxide poisoning symptoms, how to make a death look accidental, can carbon monoxide be detected after death, and life insurance payouts for accidental deaths. She'd visited forums about home heating systems. She'd watched YouTube videos about HVAC maintenance. She'd even ordered that industrial adhesive online using her personal credit card, a purchase made 3 weeks before her family died. And then there was the life insurance. David had a policy through his employer, $500,000. But Amanda had also taken out additional policies on David and each of the children about 8 months earlier. Combined, the policies totaled $2.3 million. All of them had double indemnity clauses for accidental death. The financial motive was clear, but there was something else, something that made this case even more chilling. Amanda had a boyfriend. His name was Ryan Mitchell, 41, a regional manager for a competing pharmaceutical company. They'd met at a conference in Seattle the previous year and had been conducting an affair ever since. Phone records showed they'd been in constant contact, sometimes talking or texting 50 times a day. And in those texts, Amanda had said some damning things. "I wish I could just start over, just you and me. Sometimes I fantasize about a life where it's just us, no complications. If I didn't have all these responsibilities..." She'd never explicitly said she wanted to kill her family. She was too smart for that. But the implication hung in every message, every late-night phone call, every secret meeting at hotels halfway between Portland and Seattle. Ryan would later claim he had no idea what Amanda was planning. He'd thought she was going to divorce David, maybe get custody of the kids. He swore he never imagined she'd do something like this. Investigators weren't entirely sure they believed him, but they couldn't prove he was involved in the actual murders. Amanda, on the other hand, the evidence was mounting. By the end of the first day, Amanda had been arrested and charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder. She was held without bail, and the media descended on the story like locusts. "Mom, accused of killing entire family for insurance money and new boyfriend," read one headline. "The Black Widow of Maple Ridge Drive," screamed another. But Detective Chen knew they still needed one more piece to make the case airtight. They needed to prove that Amanda had been lying about that morning. They needed to show that she couldn't have left at 5:30 a.m. like she claimed, that she'd stayed in that house long enough to make sure her plan had worked. That's where the surveillance footage came in. Have you ever noticed how modern life is just one big surveillance system? Cameras at intersections, cameras in stores, cameras on public transportation. Most of the time we don't even think about it. But when you're investigating a murder, those cameras become your best witnesses. Detective Chen requested footage from Central Metro Station, specifically Platform 7, where Amanda claimed she'd boarded the 5:47 a.m. train. If her story was true, she should appear on camera around 5:45 a.m., walking onto the platform, waiting for her train, boarding when it arrived. The footage told a very different story. The first appearance of Amanda Richardson on any Central Metro station camera was at 7:21 a.m., not 5:47. Not even close. She entered through the main entrance at 7:21, walked briskly to platform 7, and boarded the 7:23 train heading downtown. That meant Amanda had been somewhere else for nearly 2 hours after she claimed to have left her house. But here's what made the footage even more damning. Watch the way she walks. Her posture is straight, her pace is steady, her expression is neutral. She looks like someone heading to a routine business meeting, not someone who just left their sleeping family behind. There's no hesitation, no backward glances, no sign of distress. She walks past dozens of other commuters, her designer bag swinging at her side, and boards that train like it's just another day. Meanwhile, 12 miles away, her husband and 3 children are lying dead in their beds, their bodies cold, their futures stolen. The surveillance footage destroyed Amanda's timeline completely. If she didn't leave at 5:30 like she claimed, where was she? What was she doing for those extra 2 hours? Detective Chen believed she knew. Amanda had stayed at the house to make sure her plan had worked. She'd waited until she was certain everyone was dead, until the carbon monoxide had done its job. Maybe she'd checked their pulses. Maybe she'd just watched them from the doorways, making sure no one was moving, no one was breathing. And then, when she was satisfied that she'd gotten away with it, she'd calmly left her house of horrors and headed to the metro station to establish her alibi. But the investigation was far from over. Detectives started digging deeper into Amanda's background, trying to understand how a seemingly devoted mother could do something so horrific. What they found was a woman who'd been living 2 completely separate lives. On the surface, Amanda was the perfect suburban mom. She volunteered at the school fundraisers, hosted playdates, posted happy family photos on social media. Her Instagram was a carefully curated collection of smiling children, family vacations, and inspirational quotes about motherhood and gratitude. But underneath that facade was someone very different, someone who resented her family, who felt trapped by her marriage, who fantasized about a different life. Her best friend from college, Rachel Stevens, would later testify that Amanda had changed over the past year. She used to talk about how much she loved her kids, how proud she was of David's career, but then she started saying things like, "I don't know who I am anymore," and "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in my own life." I thought she was just stressed. I never imagined... Amanda's sister, Michelle, noticed it too. She stopped calling as much. When we did talk, she seemed distant. Like she was there, but not really there, you know? I asked her if everything was okay, if she and David were having problems. She just laughed and said everything was fine. Everything was always fine with Amanda. That was her answer to everything. The affair with Ryan Mitchell had started as something exciting, something that made Amanda feel alive again. But at some point, it had evolved into something darker. She'd started to see her family not as people she loved, but as obstacles to the life she wanted. The kids' school records showed something interesting too. Over the past 6 months, Amanda had become increasingly uninvolved in their activities. She'd missed parent-teacher conferences, forgotten to sign permission slips, showed up late to pick them up from after-school programs. The teachers had noticed, but they'd chalked it up to work stress. Nobody suspected that a mother was slowly disconnecting from her children because she was planning to kill them. David's co-workers painted a similar picture. He'd confided in a few of them that Amanda had been acting strange, pulling away emotionally. "She's always on her phone," David had told his friend Marcus about 3 weeks before the murders. "And when I ask who she's texting, she gets defensive. I think something's going on, but I don't know what." David had suspected the affair. He probably didn't suspect that his wife was planning to murder him. The investigation into the physical evidence continued. Forensic analysts examined the furnace modification in detail, determining that the work had been done sometime in the 24 hours before the deaths. The adhesive was still relatively fresh, not fully cured. Whoever had sealed those vents had done it recently, deliberately, knowing exactly what would happen when that furnace kicked on in the early morning hours. And here's the chilling part. The furnace had been set to turn on automatically at 3 a.m. Amanda had programmed it herself using the thermostat controls. She'd set the temperature to 74 degrees. Warm enough that the furnace would run continuously for hours, pumping carbon monoxide into the ventilation system, circulating it through every room where her family slept. They'd tested the gloves found in the garage. DNA analysis confirmed that Amanda had worn them. Her skin cells were inside the gloves, mixed with traces of the adhesive. There was no way to explain that away. No reasonable doubt about who had sabotaged the furnace. But the prosecution wanted more. They wanted to establish beyond any shadow of doubt that Amanda had planned this, that it wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision or mental breakdown. They wanted to show premeditation, calculation, cold-blooded murder. That's when they found the notebooks. Tucked away in Amanda's home office, behind a row of pharmaceutical sales catalogs and product samples, was a leather-bound journal. The kind of journal that looked expensive. The kind you'd buy for recording important thoughts and memories. What Amanda had recorded in that journal was her blueprint for murder. The entries started about 9 months before the killings. At first, they were just complaints. "I can't do this anymore. I'm suffocating. I need out." But then they evolved into something more specific. Life insurance policies secured. David doesn't suspect anything. Told him it was just good financial planning. Researched home accidents. Carbon monoxide seems like the best option. Looks natural. No violence. No mess. Ordered the adhesive. Should arrive next week. Need to figure out when to do the actual modification without David noticing. Ryan and I looked at houses in San Diego. After this is over, we'll start fresh. Just the two of us. No one will question a grieving widow moving away to heal. Reading those entries was like watching someone descend into moral darkness, one calculated step at a time. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a mental breakdown. This was systematic planning, methodical execution, and utterly selfish motivation. The prosecution was building a case that seemed unbeatable. But Amanda's defense attorney, Gerald Morrison, wasn't going down without a fight. Morrison argued that his client was having a mental health crisis, that she'd been suffering from severe depression and wasn't in her right mind when the murders occurred. He brought in psychiatrists who diagnosed Amanda with borderline personality disorder, claimed she had dissociative episodes, suggested she might not have fully understood what she was doing. It was a desperate strategy, and not many people were buying it. How do you explain away a journal full of premeditation? How do you claim mental illness when the defendant had been functioning perfectly well in her job, maintaining relationships, conducting a secret affair with complete lucidity? But the defense tried. They painted a picture of a woman overwhelmed by the pressures of modern motherhood, someone who'd cracked under the weight of societal expectations. They blamed her pharmaceutical company for pushing her to travel constantly, for creating a work environment that destroyed work-life balance. They even tried to suggest that David had been emotionally abusive, though they had absolutely no evidence to support that claim. The prosecution, meanwhile, presented witness after witness who testified to Amanda's cold-blooded planning. The owner of the hardware store where she'd bought the adhesive remembered her asking specific questions about its bonding strength and whether it would withstand high temperatures. A co-worker testified that Amanda had asked detailed questions about life insurance policies for a friend who was updating their coverage. And then there was Ryan Mitchell's testimony. He took the stand looking shell-shocked, a man who'd thought he was having an affair and had instead become entangled in a quadruple homicide. "Did Amanda ever discuss her family with you?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes, she said she felt trapped. She said her kids were exhausting, that David didn't understand her." "Did she ever suggest she wanted to leave them?" Ryan hesitated. "She said she wished she could just make them disappear. I thought she meant divorce. I swear to God, I thought she was talking about divorce." "When was the last time you spoke with Amanda before the murders?" "The night before. She called me around 10 p.m. She said everything was about to change, that we'd be together soon, that I just needed to trust her. What did you understand her to mean? I didn't know. I asked her what she meant, but she just said to be patient, that by the end of the week, everything would be different. The jury listened to all of this with expressions of disgust and disbelief. How could a mother do this to her own children? How could a wife murder her entire family for money and a boyfriend? But the most powerful evidence was still to come. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Every day, the courtroom was packed with reporters, true crime enthusiasts, and members of the community who'd known the Richardson family. Amanda's sister, Michelle, attended every single day, sitting in the front row, crying through most of the testimony. The defense tried everything. They challenged the forensic evidence, suggesting the investigators had contaminated the scene. They questioned the reliability of the digital evidence, claiming someone could have hacked Amanda's computer and planted those searches. They argued that the journal entries were creative writing, fiction exercises, not actual plans for murder. None of it worked. And then the prosecution played their trump card, the surveillance footage from Central Metro Station. The prosecutor had a large screen set up in the courtroom, and when the footage began to play, you could hear the collective intake of breath from everyone watching. There's Amanda Richardson at 7:21 a.m. walking through the entrance of Central Metro Station. The timestamp is crystal clear at the bottom of the screen. She's wearing a dark dress, professional looking, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her handbag is clutched at her side, that designer bag she'd bought 3 months earlier, the one she'd told David was a necessary expense for client meetings. The footage follows her as she walks toward Platform 7. Watch her face. Watch her posture. There's no grief there, no horror, no indication whatsoever that she's just left 4 bodies behind in a house filled with poison gas. She walks past other commuters, a young man in a suit, an elderly woman with a rolling suitcase, a couple of college students with backpacks. None of them have any idea they're sharing space with a woman who committed one of the most callous murders in Oregon history. She reaches the platform, checks her watch, looks down the track for the approaching train. When the 7:23 arrives, she boards it along with about 30 other passengers. The doors close. The train pulls away. And that's it. That's the moment that sealed Amanda Richardson's fate. The prosecutor let the footage play, then looked directly at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed the walk of a woman who murdered her entire family. Not the walk of a grieving wife who left her home that morning unaware of the tragedy unfolding behind her. Not the walk of someone having a mental breakdown or dissociative episode. This is the walk of a calculated killer who knew exactly what she'd done and was proceeding with her plan. But here's what the prosecution revealed next, the detail that made everything click into place. Remember how Detective Chen had been puzzled about what Amanda was doing for those extra 2 hours between when she claimed to leave and when she actually showed up at the metro station? Investigators had canvassed the area around the Richardson house, looking for any additional camera footage that might fill in the timeline. What they found was security camera footage from a 24-hour convenience store about 3 blocks from the Richardson home. At 6:47 a.m., Amanda's SUV is captured pulling into the parking lot. She sits in her car for approximately 8 minutes, visible through the windshield, doing something on her phone. At 6:55 a.m., she gets out, walks into the store, buys a coffee and a breakfast sandwich, walks back to her car, and drives away at 7:02 a.m. She was having breakfast. While her family lay dead in their beds, Amanda Richardson was buying coffee and a breakfast sandwich at a convenience store. The store clerk remembered her. She seemed totally normal, he testified. She even made small talk about the weather, asked me how my morning was going. She was friendly, pleasant. Nothing seemed off at all. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Amanda hadn't just killed her family and fled in a panic. She'd stayed to make sure they were dead, then she'd driven to a convenience store, calmly purchased breakfast, and only then had she headed to the metro station to establish her false timeline. The level of cold-bloodedness was almost incomprehensible. The defense had no answer for this. How do you explain away surveillance footage that shows your client buying breakfast while her children's bodies are cooling in their beds? How do you claim mental illness when the defendant is capable of making small talk with a convenience store clerk minutes after committing quadruple homicide? When the prosecution rested their case, the outcome seemed inevitable. But the defense still put Amanda on the stand, a last-ditch effort to humanize her, to make the jury see her as something other than a monster. It backfired spectacularly. Amanda took the stand wearing a conservative gray suit, her hair styled simply, her makeup minimal. She looked like someone trying very hard to appear sympathetic. But when she spoke, something was wrong. Her words said the right things. I love my family. I would never hurt my children. This is all a terrible mistake. But her affect was flat. There was no real emotion behind the words, no genuine grief. The prosecutor's cross-examination was devastating. Ms. Richardson, you've testified that you loved your children. Is that correct? Yes, more than anything. And yet you took out life insurance policies on them worth over $1 million. That was just financial planning. Any responsible parent would what? Plan for how much money they'd make if their children died? That's not what I was doing. Then why did you Google life insurance payouts for accidental deaths 17 times in the 3 months before your family was murdered? Amanda had no good answer. She stammered. She tried to claim she was researching for a client. She suggested the searches might have been made by someone else using her computer. None of it was believable. Let's talk about the morning of May 18th. You've testified that you left your house at 5:30 a.m. Is that still your testimony? Yes. And you didn't notice anything unusual about the air quality in your home? No. Everything seemed normal. Ms. Richardson, the medical examiner, has testified that by 5:30 a.m., the carbon monoxide levels in your house were at approximately 800 parts per million. That's a level that would cause immediate symptoms: dizziness, nausea, severe headaches. Are you telling this jury you experienced none of those symptoms? I don't remember feeling sick. You don't remember, or you weren't there at 5:30 a.m. like you claim? I was there. I left at 5:30. Then why does the surveillance footage from Central Metro Station show you arriving at 7:21 a.m.? I must have gotten the time wrong. You got the time wrong by nearly 2 hours? The more Amanda tried to defend herself, the worse it got. The prosecutor walked her through every piece of evidence: the journal entries, the internet searches, the tampered furnace, the disabled smoke detectors, the gloves in the garage, the convenience store footage. Ms. Richardson, did you kill your family? No, I didn't. Did you seal the furnace vents with industrial adhesive? No. Did you remove the batteries from the smoke detectors? No. Did you program the thermostat to turn on at 3 a.m.? No. I might have adjusted the thermostat at some point, but not to... Did you drug your children with sleeping pills to ensure they wouldn't wake up when the carbon monoxide started building? No. I would never... Then how do you explain the nearly empty bottle of Ambien in your nightstand in the presence of Zolpidem, the active ingredient in Ambien, in the toxicology reports of all 3 children? Amanda broke down crying at this point, but even her tears seemed performative. The jury watched her with expressions that ranged from disgust to pity, but there was no sympathy there, no belief in her innocence. The defense tried to recover during redirect, focusing on Amanda's mental state, her depression, her feelings of being overwhelmed. But it was too little, too late. The damage was done. Closing arguments were almost anticlimactic. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. Motive, means, opportunity, and a mountain of physical and digital evidence that pointed to only one conclusion. Amanda Richardson had murdered her entire family in a calculated, premeditated act designed to look like an accident so she could collect insurance money and start a new life with her boyfriend. The defense argued reasonable doubt, mental illness, the possibility that someone else had framed Amanda. But even they seemed to know they were fighting a losing battle. The jury deliberated for less than 8 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all 4 counts. Guilty of aggravated murder in the first degree for the deaths of David Richardson, Sophie Richardson, Nathan Richardson, and Emma Richardson. Amanda showed no reaction when the verdict was read. She just sat there staring straight ahead, as if she couldn't quite believe this was happening to her, as if she'd really thought she would get away with it. The sentencing hearing was held 2 weeks later. The judge allowed victim impact statements, and the courtroom was filled with people whose lives had been destroyed by Amanda's actions. David's brother spoke about the loss of his best friend, the children he'd watched grow up and now would never see graduate, get married, have families of their own. Amanda's sister Michelle spoke through tears about her nieces and nephew, about the family gatherings that would never happen again, about the permanent hole in their family. Sophie's art teacher brought in some of the little girl's paintings, showing the jury the talent and promise that had been stolen from the world. Nathan's soccer coach talked about what a kind kid he'd been, how he'd always helped younger players, how he'd had dreams of playing in college someday. And Emma's second-grade teacher read a story Emma had written just 2 weeks before she died, about a family of bunnies who went on adventures together and always looked out for each other. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. When it was Amanda's turn to speak before sentencing, she stood and faced the judge. For a moment, it seemed like she might offer some genuine remorse, some acknowledgement of the horror she'd caused. Instead, she said, "I maintain my innocence. I did not kill my family. I loved them. This verdict is a miscarriage of justice, and I will appeal." The judge looked at her with an expression of profound sadness and disgust. "Ms. Richardson, I've been on the bench for 23 years, and I have never seen a crime more cold-blooded, more calculated, or more devoid of basic human empathy than what you have done. You murdered 3 innocent children who trusted you, who loved you, who depended on you for their very lives. You murdered your husband, a man who worked hard to provide for his family and who, by all accounts, loved you deeply. And you did it all for money and to pursue a relationship with another man. The depravity of your actions is beyond comprehension." He sentenced her to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Amanda Richardson, age 36, would spend the rest of her life in prison. Amanda Richardson is currently incarcerated at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Oregon. She has filed multiple appeals, all of which have been denied. She maintains her innocence, though she has reportedly shown no interest in speaking with her remaining family members, who have publicly disowned her. Behind prison walls, Amanda's behavior has been the subject of ongoing observation by correctional psychologists. According to reports from prison staff, she participates in required programs, but remains emotionally detached from discussions about her crimes. In group therapy sessions, she's been described as intellectually present, but emotionally absent, often deflecting conversations about accountability or remorse. Fellow inmates have reported that Amanda talks about her case as if it happened to someone else, referring to the woman they think killed her family in third person, as though creating distance from her own actions. Prison records show that Amanda has requested transfer to different facilities multiple times, citing concerns about her safety after other inmates learned the nature of her crimes. The murder of children, especially by their own mother, carries a particular stigma even within the prison population. She's been placed in protective custody twice following incidents where other inmates confronted her about what she'd done. One former cellmate, speaking anonymously to a journalist, described Amanda as creepy calm, like nothing really touches her. Ryan Mitchell was never charged in connection with the murders. He cooperated fully with investigators, and there was no evidence he had any knowledge of Amanda's plans. He's since relocated to another state and refuses to discuss the case publicly. According to those close to him, Ryan has struggled profoundly with guilt, not for participating in the murders, which he didn't, but for not seeing the signs of what Amanda was capable of. He's undergone extensive therapy and has reportedly cut off all contact with anyone connected to the case. Friends of Ryan's have described him as a broken man who can't reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the monster who emerged during the trial. He really believed they were going to start a life together after she divorced David, one friend said. Finding out what she was actually planning, what she was capable of, it destroyed him. He has nightmares about those kids. He keeps wondering if there was something he could have said or done differently that might have saved them. The Richardson house on Maple Ridge Drive was sold about a year after the murders. The new owners completely renovated it, trying to erase the darkness of what happened there. But everyone in the neighborhood knows. There are some stains you just can't remove. The house sold for significantly below market value, nearly 40% less than comparable homes in the area. Even with the renovations, prospective buyers were reluctant. The real estate listing never mentioned what happened there, but in the age of Google, everyone knew. The family who eventually purchased it, a couple from out of state who needed affordable housing and were willing to overlook the history, have reported feeling uncomfortable in the home despite the extensive remodeling. They had the entire HVAC system replaced, installed state-of-the-art carbon monoxide detectors in every room, and brought in a priest to bless the house. Neighbors report seeing the lights on at all hours, as if the new residents can't quite bring themselves to sleep soundly in a place where such horror occurred. Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who first reported the family missing, moved away 6 months after the murders. She told friends she couldn't bear to look at that house every day, couldn't stop thinking about those children. Other longtime residents of Maple Ridge Drive have also relocated, unable to shake the feeling that their safe, family-friendly neighborhood had been permanently tainted. The case sparked conversations about carbon monoxide safety across the country. Many states have strengthened their requirements for carbon monoxide detectors in residential homes, mandating they be hardwired into electrical systems rather than battery-operated to prevent tampering. Oregon passed the Richardson Family Safety Act in 2022, requiring annual professional inspections of home heating systems in all rental properties and incentivizing homeowners to do the same through tax credits. Home improvement stores nationwide have reported increased sales of carbon monoxide detectors with features that make tampering more difficult. Sealed lithium batteries with 10-year lifespans, wireless connectivity that alerts homeowners to any issues via smartphone apps, and tamper-resistant mounting systems. The case also prompted HVAC companies to develop new training protocols for technicians, teaching them to recognize signs of deliberate system modification and to report suspicious alterations to authorities. David's employer established a scholarship fund in the names of Sophie, Nathan, and Emma Richardson. It provides financial assistance to children interested in the arts, athletics, and education, honoring the specific passions each child had shown in their short lives. The fund has grown to over $500,000 through donations from across the country and has already helped dozens of young people pursue their dreams in ways Sophie, Nathan, and Emma never got the chance to do. Each year, the company holds a memorial 5K run to raise additional funds for the scholarship. Hundreds of people participate, many wearing shirts with the children's photos and the words, "Taken too soon." The event has become a way for the community to channel their grief and anger into something positive, something that honors the victims rather than focusing on the perpetrator. Amanda's family, her sister Michelle, her parents, her extended relatives, have struggled with the aftermath. Michelle has spoken publicly about the experience of loving someone who turned out to be capable of such evil. "I keep asking myself if there were signs I missed," she said in an interview. "But the truth is, Amanda was so good at hiding who she really was that I'm not sure anyone could have seen this coming. That's what makes it even more terrifying." Michelle has since become an advocate for families of perpetrators of violent crimes, speaking about the unique grief and shame of loving someone who's done something unforgivable. "People forget that we lost them too," she said, "not in the same way as the victims' families, and our pain doesn't compare to theirs. But we lost our sister, our daughter, our family member, except we don't get to mourn publicly. We have to carry this shame and horror while also grieving the person we thought we knew." Amanda's parents, both in their 70s, have become reclusive. They've stopped attending church, stopped socializing with friends, essentially withdrawn from the community they'd been part of for 40 years. According to Michelle, they spend their days trying to understand where they went wrong, replaying Amanda's childhood looking for clues they might have missed. The guilt of having raised someone capable of such atrocity has consumed them. "Mom keeps looking at old photo albums," Michelle said. "Pictures of Amanda as a little girl, at birthday parties, Christmas mornings. She keeps asking, where did we lose her? When did she become this?" There are no answers. That's the hardest part. The extended family has been torn apart by the case. Some members believe Amanda is guilty and have completely cut ties. Others, mostly older relatives who can't reconcile the Amanda they knew with the monster described in court, cling to conspiracy theories about evidence planting and wrongful conviction. Family gatherings have become impossible. The fracture is permanent. The community of Maple Ridge Drive held a memorial service on the first anniversary of the murders. Neighbors planted a tree in the local park for each of the 4 victims. A weeping willow for David, a flowering cherry for Sophie, a sturdy oak for Nathan, and a small magnolia for Emma. The plaques beneath them read simply, "Taken too soon, loved forever." The park has become a place of pilgrimage for true crime followers from across the country, which has created its own set of problems. The community has had to install security cameras to prevent vandalism and unauthorized photography. Some visitors treat it like a tourist attraction rather than a memorial, taking selfies with the trees, leaving bizarre offerings, even conducting amateur investigations and paranormal investigations at the site. Local residents have expressed frustration with this morbid tourism. "This isn't entertainment," one neighbor told a reporter. "Real people died here, real children, and their families are still suffering. But people show up with their cameras and their podcasts like it's all just a story for their consumption." The elementary school that Sophie and Emma attended dedicated a reading garden in their memory, a quiet space filled with the kinds of books both girls had loved. Nathan's middle school retired his soccer jersey number and created an annual sportsmanship award in his name, given to the player who best embodies kindness and team spirit. These memorials serve a dual purpose, honoring the children's lives while also ensuring that they're remembered for who they were, not just how they died. Teachers at both schools have made it a point to talk about Sophie's artwork, Nathan's generous spirit, Emma's infectious laugh. They refuse to let Amanda's actions be the final word on these children's lives. Detective Sarah Chen, who led the investigation, has since retired from the Portland Police Department. In interviews, she's said that the Richardson case changed her, that she can never look at seemingly happy families the same way again. "It taught me that you can never really know what's happening behind closed doors," she said. "The most dangerous people are often the ones who look the most normal." Chen now works as a consultant on cold cases and teaches courses in criminal investigation at a local university. She frequently uses the Richardson case as an example of how modern technology, surveillance cameras, digital forensics, cell phone tracking, has revolutionized homicide investigations. 20 years ago, Amanda might have gotten away with it, she's told her students. The technology proved what we suspected but couldn't prove with physical evidence alone. For the jurors who convicted Amanda, the experience has been lasting. Several have spoken about how difficult it was to look at crime scene photos of the children, to hear testimony about their final hours, to render a verdict that would send someone to prison for life. One juror described having nightmares for months afterward, dreaming about Emma clutching her stuffed elephant, about Sophie's unfinished drawings, about Nathan's soccer equipment scattered on his bedroom floor. "We knew we were doing the right thing," the juror said. "The evidence was overwhelming, but that doesn't make it easy to live with. We took a mother away from her children, except that mother had already taken her children from the world. It's this horrible circular tragedy that makes your head spin." The prosecution team, led by District Attorney James Morrison, considers the Richardson case one of the most important victories of their careers, not because of its high profile, but because of what it prevented. "If Amanda had succeeded," Morrison said, "if she'd collected that insurance money and started her new life, how long before she did it again? Before someone else became inconvenient? We stopped a predator who happened to be someone's mother." The case has been featured in multiple true crime documentaries, podcasts, and books. Each retelling brings a new wave of attention, a new surge of online detectives dissecting every detail. Crime scene photos, court transcripts, and surveillance footage have been endlessly analyzed, shared, and discussed across social media platforms. While this attention keeps the case in the public consciousness, it also means the victims' surviving family members can never truly move on. They're confronted with their loss repeatedly, reminded of the horror every time a new podcast episode drops or a documentary airs. Some family members have advocated for stricter laws around how true crime content can use names and images of victims, arguing that the current system re-victimizes families for entertainment value. Amanda Richardson was convicted on 4 counts of aggravated murder in the first degree, 4 counts of tampering with evidence, 4 counts of reckless endangerment, and 1 count of insurance fraud. She was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years for the remaining charges. Under Oregon law, she will never be eligible for release. The surveillance footage from Central Metro Station, that image of a woman walking calmly to catch a train while her family lay dead, has become one of the most recognizable pieces of evidence in modern true crime. It's been shown in documentaries, analyzed in criminology courses, and discussed in psychology journals as an example of extreme antisocial behavior. Because here's the thing that haunts everyone who's studied this case. Amanda Richardson didn't kill in a moment of rage or fear. She didn't strike out impulsively. She planned every detail, executed her plan with precision, and walked away from the carnage she'd created without a backward glance. That footage shows us something terrifying about human nature, that some people are capable of viewing others, even their own children, as nothing more than obstacles to be removed. That beneath the veneer of normalcy, beneath the smiles and the family photos and the PTA meetings, pure evil can hide. In the years since the trial, forensic psychologists have studied Amanda's case extensively, trying to understand the pathology that allowed her to commit such acts. Dr. Robert Chen, a criminal psychologist who evaluated Amanda pre-trial, published a paper analyzing her psychological profile. He concluded that Amanda exhibited traits consistent with narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy, a complete lack of empathy, an inflated sense of self-importance, and the ability to manipulate others without remorse. What makes Amanda Richardson particularly dangerous, Dr. Chen wrote, is her ability to maintain a facade of normalcy. She functioned well in society, held a job, maintained relationships, but underneath, she was completely incapable of genuine emotional connection. Her family weren't people to her. They were props in the life she was presenting to the world. And when those props no longer served her purposes, she discarded them with the same emotional weight most people would give to throwing out old furniture. Today, David, Sophie, Nathan, and Emma Richardson are remembered not for how they died, but for how they lived. A dedicated father and husband, a talented young artist, an enthusiastic soccer player, a joyful little girl who brought sunshine to everyone she met. Their lives were cut short by someone who should have protected them, but their memory lives on in the hearts of everyone who knew them, everyone who loved them, and everyone who believes that justice, however painful, must be served. The scholarship fund continues to grow. The memorial trees in the park continue to bloom each spring. And somewhere in Oregon, in a prison cell, Amanda Richardson continues to maintain her innocence to anyone who will listen, though fewer and fewer people are listening with each passing year. Rest in peace, David, Sophie, Nathan, and Emma. You deserved so much better than the hand you were dealt. You deserved to grow old, to achieve your dreams, to live the lives that were stolen from you. Your story has been told, your voices have been heard, and you will never, ever be forgotten.